Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to learn how to make garlic mullein ear oil. Hi, my name's Corinne, and here at Spirea, I share videos that weave together plant wisdom, holistic health, self-sufficiency with just a dash of magic. If this sounds interesting to you, I'd love for you to stick around. So a while back, I asked if you folks wanted to have a video on garlic mullein ear oil, and I got a resounding thumbs up from many of you, so here we are. Now, why would you want to make garlic mullein ear oil? This product is fantastic when your little ones get ear infections. And this can happen a lot when kids are young, and a lot of it has to do with their anatomy and the fact that their faces are smaller and therefore their eustachian tubes are closer to the sinus cavity, so things tend to drain in there much more easily. As they get older, their faces get a bit bigger, those eustachian tubes kind of widen out a bit, and then they angle just slightly. And that change in anatomy is often enough. And this is why people will say, oh, they usually grow out of the ear infections. Well, that's why. So you're going to need 3 ingredients in order to make this today. You're going to need some dried or fresh mullein. I have a gigantic bag here, but you of course don't need a bag this big. I'll put some links below to places where you can buy dried mullein from. I actually prefer using fresh mullein, but it's February and minus 20 degrees Celsius outside, so dried it is. And you're going to need some good quality garlic of some kind, and then you're going to need an organic olive oil. And so that's really all that you need in order to be able to make this product. So the mullein, the reason why we include this in an ear oil is because it has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, and it's also a vulnerary. This means it's going to help to reduce inflammation in the tissues, which is going to help with any pain. And vulnerary means it's going to help to heal the tissues. So this is kind of our topical healer. The garlic, on the other hand, is our broad spectrum antimicrobial. So this is going to fight the ear infection regardless of source, be it bacterial, viral, or fungal. So that's why I really like to include the garlic. If you don't have access to mullein, you can just make an olive oil infused with garlic, and that will work as well. It's not as good in terms of reducing the inflammation, but it will at least fight the infection. Now, I always suggest taking an internal, especially if the ear infection is caused by a virus, which most of them are. I do recommend taking some kind of internal antiviral as well. Again, consulting with your health practitioner of choice, but things like elderberry syrup make really nice additions. So this recipe can be found both in my book, along with a whole bunch of other really great recipes. So it's not a bad little reference to have, but I also have an old blog post where I did share this recipe. So I'll link that below as well. So in order to make this, you're going to have a double boiler or a makeshift double boiler, just because we don't want that olive oil to burn. We don't want those herbs to burn. And if you have a double boiler at home that you use for food, you can go ahead and grab that. Or you can easily make one by taking a pot and placing a bowl on top. And so what you'll do is you'll have some water in the bottom of your pot. You're going to bring that to a simmer, and then you're going to keep it on low heat. And that's going to warm up and infuse the olive oil with the garlic and the mullein. Now, if you haven't seen my my video on using your crock pot as a kind of a quick way to make herbal infused oils, I'm going to link that up here because you can use that exact same method to make the garlic mullein ear oil. Now, in my book, this recipe yields 500 milliliters. I'm only going to do about half that today, so I'm going to half the recipe that's in here. So I'll have 250 milliliters of garlic mullein ear oil by the time we're done. So the first thing you want to do is you want to zero out your scale and make sure you place your bowl or the top part of your double boiler on top here. And because my recipe in the book calls for 28 grams, get that out of the way, I need about 14. And it's going to be a lot more than you think it will because mullein is really fluffy and it doesn't weigh very much. Now, my preference is to use fresh mullein when I have access to it, but seeing as it's minus 20 degrees Celsius outside in February, I've got a little bit to wait on that. So there we are. So that is 14 grams of mullein. So as you can see, it is quite a bit. So I'm going to place that aside. That's all the weighing you have to do. And from here, now if I had to kind of eyeball that, I'd say that's about 1.5 cups if you don't have a kitchen scale, but a digital kitchen scale, if you plan on getting into any of this type of work, making tinctures, salves, ointments, oils, it's going to be one of the best purchases that you have. And next we want to add in some garlic. So if we were doing the whole amount, which again was a yield of 500 milliliters, you'd want an entire garlic bulb. But because I'm halving it today, I'm probably going to go for about 3, depending on the size, 3 or 4 cloves. So I'm going to get to working on that, and I'll show you what to do after we get our garlic ready. Are you ready to take your herbal learning to the next level? To dive into the world of plant-based wisdom and to walk the path of a plant worker? If you are, I invite you to check out Weavers of Plant Wisdom, which is my new monthly membership platform where we explore all topics plants. I hope to see you there. So because some of these cloves were really, really small, I ended up with 5 that was about half the bulb. And then you're going to want to crush it. So you can either use a garlic press or you can just use your knife and gently push down, and that's going to crush the garlic, releasing the juices, which is exactly what we want. Now, I've had questions about whether you can use garlic mullein ear oil for tinnitus. One, I can't make any medical suggestions online. However, if you have any experience with it, you can leave a comment below. I personally haven't. Most people if they've had issues with tinnitus, you've got to figure out what caused their tinnitus. So once everything's nice and crushed and you can get that beautiful aroma, you're just going to scrape your garlic right on top of your mullein. So I'm over at my stove and I've got my bowl on top of my pot. I like to use a little toothpick here just to let some of the steam out. And I just need to add my olive oil. So what you'll do is you'll pour, remembering it's very fluffy, so I've got a knife here so I can stir and get that mullein all saturated with olive oil, which is what I want. There we are. So once you have everything well covered with the olive oil, you're going to want to bring this to a simmer and then immediately reduce it to low heat, very low. Oops. Low and slow is what we're going for here. And then you're going to have it simmering for about 1 to 2 hours, and it'll be very fragrant. You'll be able to smell the garlic. And once it cools, I'll show you how to strain it and what to do next. So it's been about 1.5 hours and my garlic mullein ear oil is ready for straining. Now, as you can see, again, because this mullein is so fluffy, it's absorbed a lot of the olive oil. So I have a two-step filtration process I like to do. I first start with my potato ricer. And if you haven't seen my video on my must-have items, if you're gonna have a herbal clinic or even just get into any of this kind of work, I'll link that up here because this is probably one of my most used tools. It looks like a giant garlic press. And I use this for pressing tinctures. I don't use it for pressing oils that often, especially if I'm using fresh herbs because I don't want the water content to come out, but this was dry herb material and I really want to get as much of that olive oil out as possible. So I'm going to strain it through here first, and then I'm going to do a secondary strain through another measuring cup that I've put some cheesecloth on and secured with an elastic. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to catch all those little hairs that mullein has, because you don't want those going into the ear. You really want to filter this very, very well. So if you have really fine mesh strainers or cheesecloth, you can, before I got a potato ricer, I would just strain the whole thing through cheesecloth and then wring it out. But that gets pretty oily and messy. So I like doing this two-step process. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I'm going to carefully, and you can see I've let it cool so I'm able to touch it. I'm going to carefully get, and I'll probably have to do this in a couple batches by the looks of it. Oh no, I should be able to squeeze it all out in here. And this kind of stuff's always messy. You know, it's not a bad idea to have some towels around or paper towels if you don't mind using those. And then you're just going to look at how much more olive oil I'm getting out by gently squeezing. Now there is going to be a little bit of water content in the garlic, so I'm not going to squeeze too hard. but I was able to get quite a bit more olive oil out. However, I can see by looking at this, there are pieces of mullein inside the olive oil that I wouldn't want in an end product, especially if it's going into a little one's ears. So from here, and then I'm going to pour it and strain it through my cheesecloth. And then I'll let it sit for a bit because it takes some time to strain through the cheesecloth, but that's going to catch, you can even see on the top here already, maybe my husband can get a zoom in. See, I've already started to catch some of the herb material. You can see it all in here. This would have all ended up in your end product. And then eventually inside the ear, which would only just further inflame and irritate an already irritated ear. So my cheesecloth actually caught a lot. I'm going to let that sit and strain probably just for a few minutes, just so that way I get, again, as much end product as possible. From here, you're then just going to place it in little dropper bottles and put a label on it. So as you can see, the combination of both the potato ricer and the cheesecloth, one, I got a really high yield. I have almost a full cup, which is great. But as you can see, there's nothing floating inside your ear oil. There's no bits of mullein in there, which is exactly what the cheesecloth is meant to do, is strain out all of those pieces. So you're going to want a few layers of cheesecloth because if you've ever worked with before, you know it's got holes in it, right? So you want to probably do, I think I had about 3 layers of cheesecloth on top there. And then I just placed my ear oil in a dropper bottle about this size. Now, in terms of shelf life, I usually tell people to use it up within a year, but I've never had any go bad. Ever, and that's probably due to the garlic. And you don't use very much. You just want to do a few drops in the ears when you've got any discomfort. What's kind of nice about a topical treatment like this, again, consulting your medical practitioner of choice, there's no harm in treating ears if you're just suspecting there might be an ear infection, because there's nothing in here that is really contraindicated, unless of course you've got a perforated eardrum. That's a different thing. Again, consult your medical professional of choice. I usually do about 2 to 3 drops, and I always treat both ears because with little ones, those ear infections can migrate from ear to ear quite easily. And I always combine with an internal antiviral too, so that way you're fighting the infection topically as well as internally with something like elderberry syrup. Now, if you've got any questions or comments about garlic mullein ear oil, I encourage you to leave those below. And until next time, this is Corinne from Spirea Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.